Hey, all right, this is part one of a series that I'm going to do on how to make paper cartridges with my paper cartridge kit, starting with 44 caliber, which you can use in revolvers like your 1860 Army, as well as the Dragoon and Walker series. Let's get started. All right, so here we've got our cartridge kit. Let's open her up and take a look at what's inside. First, there's the mandrel and the forming die. There's a small funnel. And there are templates for tracing and cutting out your cartridge envelopes. Now, typically what I use these days for paper is just a coffee filter like this. I might nitrate it, or you can use a simple tissue paper that you might find for gift wrap or something like that. Either one will work just fine. The coffee filter will tend to be a little bit stronger though, but it's up to you and personal preference. So here I've cut out already, using my templates, an envelope piece and a bottom piece, just to demonstrate how to use this kit. The exact size doesn't really matter at this point, since you'll trim all that stuff down anyway. On the mandrel, there's 3 lines. These are going to be length trim lines for different powder charges. So 20 grains at the bottom, 30 grains in the middle, 40 grains at the top. So your 40 grains for your Dragoon and Walkers, and 20 or 30 grains for the rest. So we'll just take our paper, and you can do it one way or another. Here I'll just hold it with my thumb, and then I'll take my other fingers and kind of carefully and tightly wrap it around the mandrel. Now I'll leave this little strip sticking out, and I'll take my 3-in-1 glue. So I'm using that because it's flammable. But you can use, Elmer's glue stick or whatever glue you like, honestly. Glue stick or something flammable. So this will work, or water glass will work, for example. So again, we'll tighten it again with our fingers, and we'll just press it onto the mandrel, and we'll wrap that strip over the top. And it doesn't matter at this point that the glue's a little bit wet. It'll dry and it'll be perfectly flammable. So about those cuts in our mandrel, we'll take our fingers and thumb and just roll that envelope around, and you should be able to see impressions being made in that paper, and that will let us know when we're ready to trim it to size, where we should trim it. Okay. Next step, take your bottom sheet, and what I do is I will put it on top of the die like that, and we'll take some glue and we'll just go around the base of our cartridge. Okay, and we can spread that glue out just a little bit. And you don't want to use too much of this glue. Okay. Now I'll take our mandrel and we'll just press it down into that sheet on the die. Just like that. And we'll press it down until it stops moving, which is just about to the bottom of it. Now to remove this, what I recommend you do is grab the top of the paper and give it a little twist. So be gentle, twist slowly, and pull it out. Sometimes the bottom piece will get stuck to the inside of the die, or any number of things. Sometimes the little envelope will get stuck to the mandrel, and you just kind of have to be gentle and gently twist. So I'm kind of twisting both pieces very slowly to get them to kind of separate. Okay. So we've got our envelope separated. So now our next step is going to be to trim it to length. So what should we do? We could do a 30 grain or a 20 grain charge. I think what I'll do is a 20 grain and I'll load a conical on top. So I'll find my trim line and I will cut this thing down to size. Just like that. We can always verify our length by putting the cartridge back on the mandrel, and if it lines up with our cut line, we're good to go. So again, that's a 20 grainer right there. We'll just gently remove it again. Okay, now how do we fill this is the next question. What I like to do is I'll take my funnel and I'll set it down And you might place your die on top, and that way your cartridge sticks up and you've got a place to hold it. Of course, another option is just to hold it in your finger and thumb and put the funnel on top. All right, so the funnel's got a couple different uses. I'm going to bring over a little work pad here. That way, if I spill some powder, it'll be caught on there. We'll take our envelope. And the 44 ones are pretty thick, so they're kind of freestanding on their own. What I like to do, because it's simple, you can always use like a volumetric powder measure. In my case, I just use my powder flask. And I've got another kit that comes in handy for this sort of thing. And that is just a set of spouts. So these go from 10, 15, all the way up to 35 in 5 grain increments. So because we're doing a 20 grain charge, we'll select our 20 grain spout, set the kit down. Now we'll change out our spout. So this is the usual 30 grain spout that comes on these. We'll screw in our 20 grain. Okay. Now, take my funnel, and then I'll just measure out 20 by pouring it on top of my finger. All right, we'll fill the spout. And now we will pour it on into the cartridge. Okay. We'll carefully lift out the funnel. Okay, cool. So now we've got our charge of powder right there in the cartridge envelope. Let me go fetch a conical. So here I've got a 44 caliber Johnson & Dow, and we're going to go ahead and seat that now. So we'll take our envelope, and we'll just apply a little bit of glue to the inside edge. And it doesn't really matter how much of this stuff you apply here because it's a flammable glue, and it shouldn't affect your powder much, at least in my experience. You can also just use Elmer's glue, in which case you would just apply the glue to the bullet. But for this 3-in-1, I find that putting it in the cartridge seems to work a little bit better for whatever reason. So now we'll just carefully place the heel of the bullet into the cartridge. Just like that. And just press it on with your thumb and forefinger. And there you have it, a simple paper cartridge ready to go. Okay, and we'll let that one dry. Simple as that. Next, I'll show you how to do a round ball. All right, so I've gone and made up another envelope, just using the same technique as before. And for this one, with a round ball, I'll just use a 30 grain spout. So I'll go ahead and get rid of the 20 grain here. And we'll put our 30 grain brass one back. All right, so with that, throw a charge. Another reason the flasks make this process easier is you can just set your cartridge envelope on top and flip it. Pull it back out. All right. So it makes life a little bit easier. You can more or less ensure all your powder ends up in your cartridge that way. So now let me set this down, and I'll come back and get a round ball. Okay, and here I have just a 4x4 cast round ball, and it's got a sprue on it. And if you're using cast balls, you want to have that sprue facing up. So we'll make sure that's facing up when we put it in our cartridge. All right, so just as before, we'll put our glue kind of along the inside of this cartridge. Okay. Don't need a whole lot. But again, the glue doesn't affect the powder that much. Let's take our ball, face the sprue up, gently place it inside. Now this is a little bit of a different technique because you want to take your thumb and sort of swipe it upward along these edges. Okay, that way you get some good coverage on that round ball. Not quite the same as having that little heel like you do on the conical, but it still works, as you can see. So because these are a little bit shorter than the conical bullets, you can fit a little bit more powder. So this is about 20 grains of powder, maybe a little bit more. This is about 30 grains of powder, but either one should feed just fine in your standard 44 percussion revolvers. Okay, so now let's go to the next step. Now we're on to the next and really last step of making these cartridges. First, we'll take our lube, and this is a 50-50 mix of just beeswax and lamb tallow. Okay, so now we'll just let this melt down. All right, and now that our lube's all melted, we'll go ahead and just dip lube our 44 caliber cartridges. So we've already made up those, a conical and a round ball. It doesn't want to stay flat in my hand. But we'll go ahead and dip those. It's very, very easy. So we'll just hold the cartridge in your thumb and forefinger, dip it quickly, maybe roll it a little bit, and that's all you really need to do. It's very, very simple. So that's our conical that we did earlier. Now we'll do our round ball. Same idea. Just dip it. And that's it. You don't need to hold it under or anything. Just quickly dip it in and take it out. And as you might imagine, you can make several hundred cartridges off of a can of lube this size, which is 4 ounces, because you only need a little bit for each cartridge. And that about does it for this tutorial on making 44 caliber paper cartridges. If you're interested in any more of this gear, there's of course the kit. There's the flask spout kit to go with your powder flask. And if you need a place to put your paper cartridges, I've got a series of cartridge boxes that'll hold 6 plus percussion caps ready to go for you. All right, that about does it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching.